Kelly, a lot of business owners think HR is just a payroll, compliance, or a button pushing. When you walk into a company for the first time, one of the biggest misconception you usually have to undo, what is it? What's that biggest misconception?
Yeah, I would say it is that it's just a cost center, that it's an administrative cost center, and that they just hire and fire and manage the benefits into payroll. And there are a lot of organizations that that's true. And I would venture to guess that those organizations don't have the culture or revenue or retention that they probably would like to have.
What do you think in today's DNA, a lot of companies essentially, the word I would like to use, drop the ball. One comes down to HR. One comes down to staying and being compliant.
Being compliant, I have two answers. Being compliant is really just not having somebody who even knows what to ask, because when you're an HR professional, you understand and you're tracking and you're paying attention because it's we're required to. Most of us are certified as well, and understanding what's happening in the government, in the cities, in the states, and the federal government. Everywhere has a different law now about leaves of absence and even voting, whether or not you can have a non-compete or an employment agreement. There's so many little laws out there that you wouldn't ever know about unless you had someone paying attention. So from compliance, from that standpoint, if you're in more than one state, I would venture to guess that almost everybody has at least something that they're doing that's not compliant. I'm not saying
Wow.
that the risk is high there, but I'm saying it's likely, because I bet you don't know all of the laws unless you have an HR person that's dedicated and paying attention to that. In general, I would say the biggest miss from an HR standpoint is aligning the people strategy to the business strategy and not
What does that
seeing.
mean? What does that mean?
Yeah, it means that, does everyone in your organization know how your company makes money? Does everyone in your organization know what the growth goals are and what the strategy is for the year? Has that been communicated through every single department in your organization, especially in these last two generations? And it's going to continue to be that way as the younger generations come into work. People are not sold anymore like they used to be. They don't come in, they don't do exactly what they're told to do just because somebody told them to do it. They ask questions, they ask why, they want to understand what they're working for. They want purpose, and people deserve purpose. They deserve to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it and how it helps the greater good. And even if even if you're making lipstick or water bottles, or you offer AI services to, I don't know, a company that makes boxes, there's always some sort of pull through to how you're helping people and you're helping the world in some way. And if
Mhm.
you can tie it to that and how each individual person's role contributes to the success of the organization and their coworkers' success, then you can start to get buy-in. It sounds like this big, huge thing too, when in reality, it's just very simple.
Interesting. And you talked about communication, right? And I think I shared with you on our original call how knowing what my role is and being appreciated in the company by simply being shared the insight, so I can have the ability to connect the dots. What I'm doing is not just making money, it's actually making a difference. Do you really think that's lacking in today's world, in today's corporate environment?
Yeah, I know it is. I see it in almost all of the clients that I work for. And it's not because the people who are leading the organization aren't great people and aren't doing a lot of good things for their people. I think it's because they think they don't need to understand that, or they don't necessarily need to know that. And again, it's not an inferior or superior thing. It's not an ego thing. It's just not obvious all of the time. Here's an example. Manufacturing company has an executive team, they've got managers, engineers, they've got accounting, they've got marketing, and they have warehouse. And a lot of people would put the warehouse at the bottom of the
Sure.
totem
Very
pole,
common.
right?
Very normal to do.
Yes, very common.
Very common.
The warehouse group in the past was never made to understand what the business even did. They knew they
Really?
were making pieces and parts
Wow.
that built this structure, but they didn't understand what the point of the structure was, why what they were doing mattered. And once the team, the leadership team, and HR as our group came in and started talking about this is what the business does, this is how it helps the world overall. I mean, not to be overzealous, but here's what the business does, how it makes money and how it sells to people. And here's how your roles impact that. And when you make mistakes, here's what that means. And here's why we're having turnover, because we're having errors, because people aren't being trained, because people don't understand what they're doing, because they don't understand what the point it is. If you're following me, you're threading it all the way through. And then all of a sudden, the training gets better, the people start caring, there's less errors, the company starts making more money, there's no turnover. And we got a happy group of people who understand what they're trying to do.
Versus overworking them and they cannot connect the dots, how their mistake is essentially, in the grand scheme of things, can make a big difference on the bottom line for the different department. Yeah,
Exactly.
that makes sense. I had a friend that was part of a technology company, was building a piece for the end product. He did not know that what he was building is a piece for the end product that's supposed to replace him.
Wow.
That was
Yeah.
a big shocker, right, to him. But obviously, how would you battle that if there's a transparency, right? Especially maybe technology world is slightly different than just the different industries. But I'm sure certain secrets, I guess, or certain things you cannot just communicate to the rest of the body of the company, but majority, how are they helping each other and how their mistakes can impact other departments certainly must be communicated to create that environment, winning environment, right?
Yeah, that same client we were talking about, they started doing daily stand-ups, and they hadn't ever done those before
What
other
is
than
that?
department
Can you
stand-ups.
give me an example? What is that daily stand-up? I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so everybody in the organization met in the warehouse because it was the biggest space, and they all stood in the morning and talked about what their departments are working on, what projects are going out that week,
Wow.
what the due dates are. It was an engineering and manufacturing firm. So everybody had to work together because they were all ultimately, the sales team and the customer service team get the order. It's got to go through purchasing to get the required parses. Oh my gosh, parts and pieces. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Excuse
no
me.
worries.
Then it goes over to engineering to design it. Well, and there's some mix in there, obviously. Engineering's designing it, and then it goes to manufacturing to create, and then it goes to shipping and receiving to send out. Anybody messes that up, the customer doesn't get what they need.
Yeah,
Really, again, pulling the thread through, I keep saying that, but everybody started to understand what each person's role was. So when you're like, sales keeps selling this stuff that we don't normally make, and then we messed it up. Well, if you get those people to actually talk to each other, wow. Engineering's like, I don't know how to do that because I've never done that before because you sold this purple squirrel.
I see. So it creates something in a company that you've seen from first hand, that synergy, that you
Yes.
essentially indirectly equipping other departments with other people's strength and what they do for a living.
Yes.
And that's how you have the
Yes.
ability to deliver that unity and winning environment that leads to more profitability eventually because everybody's happy and working as a team.
That's right.
I mean,
Exactly.
we're seeing
Exactly.
that every day in sports teams, right? How one bad apple can just destroy the culture. And that's interesting. I like that perspective. And your audits financials, you audit financials, you audit operations and marketing, but most companies never audit their people strategy. I remember you were telling
That's
me
right.
that, right? Why is that risky, especially for a small and a growing business?
Yeah, first is compliance. It's really looking at what states are you in, what cities are you in, how many people do you have, what systems are you using, how are you doing payroll? I mean, there were little things like think the benefits offerings that used to be able to be self-administered can no longer be self-administered because of IRS changes. Well, if you don't know that, you don't know that. And you're doing something completely illegal. I did an audit of a client that had 13 states, and they had these very outdated employment agreements. Every single one of them had non-competes in them.
Wow.
And we went through, and 6 of the states had no non-competes, period. I'm like, this is garbage. It's not even worth a piece of paper that you just wrote it on. This is going to get thrown out immediately. So you take those types of things and say, like, nobody does employment agreements anymore anyway. They're not, everything's at will. Like, this is, again, just not even worth writing this up. So instead of having your salespeople sign this piece of paper that may or may not scare them, may or may not keep them from doing something when they leave, why don't we write a better employee handbook, setting expectations of what we expect of all people to not steal the intellectual property and compete against your organization and get the buy-in, and then spend our time and money on getting people to really love working here and understand what they're doing, so you don't even have to worry about these non-competes. People are still going to leave, but if
Yeah.
they leave with a positive attitude and feeling like they worked at a great organization, they're probably not going to be mad and go try to steal their previous customers as much. Sales is sales, and it's always going to be a thing. You just have to be able to set expectations that are reasonable and that are actually something that Accord would up.
Yeah. Kelly, you said something about, when they leave, they'll be happy. And I want to really ask that question and specifically direct to the owners of businesses or anybody who's in the process of starting a business. It is very easy sometimes to think of yourself when a good employee leaves to a competitor, right? If you have a company right now and you're starting a company right now, what is your mindset behind developing an environment that is celebrates when somebody gets a better position, better job, or starts something else elsewhere? How, as an owner, you invested so much time as a sales director or whatever the department director, you invested so much in that individual. They got better. They're going back to going somewhere to greater things. How do you, as an owner, can develop that? What they should be considering or thinking about as a CEO, as an owner, or as a director?
I've always been taught and been of the mindset, because I was taught this, that you want to hire people that are smarter than you. If you're the smartest person in the room, you need to go find a different room because you're not learning and you're not growing. And how boring, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's important to remember. And if you're going to start your own business, first of all, I think having a huge ego is a huge disadvantage, because you're going to get knocked down and heard no and all this hard stuff that you deal with that you've probably not had to deal with in corporate, because somebody gives you this title and then you're the big person in the big seat, and it's
Sure.
not, I don't wanna say it's not as hard, 'cause it's very respectfully, it's very hard. But I think remembering too that somebody bring you along? Like, or are you just so amazing that you magically landed in this position that you're in? I bet other people brought you along. So,
Absolutely.
paying it forward and being a female entrepreneur specifically, I have had so many other women who are farther along in their business than me, or even just starting or at the same level, that say, like, come on, let's do this together. And, I'm of the mindset as well that I don't shun my competitors. I want to know what they're good at, and because they're probably good at something that I'm not. And
Yeah.
couldn't we refer to each other? And sometimes it's just straight competitive. And I've certainly had people leave the organization I was at to go to a competitor or do something better, and sometimes it is painful and sad, and something didn't go the way you wanted to, so they left, and that's just kind of part of growing, I think, as a professional, and being able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, "Is there something I could have done better to retain this person?" Ask them, I think, is incredibly important too. Be willing to hear
Communication.
feedback, yes, and listen when they tell you you didn't do something like you maybe should have. Be really, just throw your ego in the trash. It's a complete waste of time when you're leading other people. So I feel like I rambled on a lot. It
That was great.
should be, well, thank you. I think it should be our goal to get people to the point where they could go do more. The ultimate compliment, I think, is when somebody could do more, but they wanna stay with you, and you have to push them. To say, "All right."
Yeah. Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, sorry for interrupting. I thought of something that was as I was listening to you, and I'm like, oh my gosh, when somebody feels that this organization or this person added value to me, that I am better, I am further ahead. When it comes down to going elsewhere, the first question you will not be asking, can I make more money there? The first
Yeah.
question you'll be asking, can I get the same environment and same treatment? Will I be valued there more? than me making money, because sometimes making money is probably not, it's not probably, I know research shows, I think it was you or somebody else told me, research shows that 70% of the reason why individuals leave the companies is because of the direct manager who they have a relationship with, and that's a big reason why a lot of individuals will end up leaving somewhere or staying somewhere,
Yes,
and kind of to what you just said, right? Can we talk about over your specialty, right? Because you specialize in companies that are growing or at what we call inflection point, right?
correct. Yes.
What are the warning signs that business has outgrown in its current people structure, right? Even if revenue is great, even if revenue they're making money, but where is that point out that listen, you outgrew your people, we need to develop better structures? What are those signs, warning signs?
I would say there's a couple of things. From a people standpoint, when you start having turnover
Huh?
in an area that you haven't had it, or when you constantly have turnover in a specific area, those two things I would look at. If you constantly have turnover in the same area, then you know you probably, exactly to what you just said, have a leadership issue or you have
Mm,
a system issue. Either the way you're asking people to do things doesn't make any sense, or you have probably a bad manager or no training. But again, I'd go that to being a system issue. If you have a previously very successful, and productive person who's no longer being productive, or you're having performance issues with them all of the sudden, again, you've either got a leadership, a system issue, or a personal issue. Um, but I would say from a overall business operation standpoint, I think the flashing red light would be you're doing the same thing and not getting the same results that you got previously. Because, like, I can think of a time in an organization where I worked. Not a startup. I would call it a restart, but it was a startup restart situation, and we got to the point of growth where I told my CEO, I got us here, but I can't get us there. I don't have the training. I haven't done it before. You gave me an opportunity, and that's really amazing. And I'm grateful for that. But I need some sort of education or certification or relationship with somebody who can help me figure out how to get it there. So if your systems are kind of not working the way that they used to anymore and not getting those same results, you might still if your revenue plateaus, but you feel like you're doing everything right, those are some things that you got to start thinking about. Okay, what am I doing? It's like this core definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing and
yep,
expecting a different result.
sure.
Like if you're in that stuck spot and you're starting to see employee issues where you haven't had them before, I would say that's probably a red flag to say something's not right here.
What, you don't need to answer that if you don't feel like, but what was the outcome there? Did you end up either changing the leadership, which probably not happen? Did you end up change the system, or you simply
Well,
left?
neither. She said, I believe in you. You'll figure it out.
Which is, I was hoping you're gonna say that, which is a very common answer you get in a leadership role when a leader feels like he's stuck or she's stuck.
Yeah. We could talk about that for about 17 hours, but we won't.
Yeah. And this is important to, this is important for listeners to hear, especially if you're wanting to grow to Google size or even 200 to 50, 200, 300 employee company, right? Those things, those just happen magically because you have an amazing product. There's so many companies have an amazing product, amazing processes in place, but if the
Yes,
leadership is not there, oh my gosh, everything rises and falls in leadership, right? Or vice versa. If you have great leadership, you don't have technology, it's another issue, right?
that's right.
And I've experienced both.
Yes,
Which was
same.
pretty interesting to me. If a founder told you today, if a founder told you today, I'll deal, that actually makes me even chuckle to say that, I will deal with HR later. What's the long-term cost of that decision from the cultural risk and, of course, the leadership perspective?
Yeah, they're going to have turnover, which we all know costs money. They're going to probably have something happen like they get sued or they get audited or the EEOC walks in to their business.
What
And
is
that's
EEOC?
when
What is EEOC?
Equal Opportunity Employment Commission.
They can just show up
So
randomly to your business.
they sure can. Yep,
Wow.
they sure can. Or someone can call the EEOC if they feel like they were terminated or treated unfairly or retaliated against. That's usually when those leaders that say, I'll deal with it when I have to, that's when they have to, because they're being sued or being held accountable to something that they weren't supposed to do. And they either intentionally or unintentionally did it wrong because they weren't paying attention to it.
That goes back to my question a couple minutes ago when I asked about the when does owner know that they're simply outgrowing, even though they're making a lot of profit, but they're outgrowing their people, they need a structure. Is that safe to say that's a prime example when the owner just trying to be everywhere and anywhere and not relying on systems and other people to starting to produce results or tasks? And those relationships being neglected, the bigger pictures being neglected, and that's how this issue starting to pop up left and right. Is that safe to say that's what you're seeing quite often?
Absolutely. And I can even relate to that myself as a founder. You get into it, it's your ideas, it's your business, it's your passion. And even when you're trying to start up and save revenue, save money, you're thinking, what can I do myself? And trying to get people to come into your organization when you're starting up and trying to grow and understand the passion for what you do and make sure that they have the same passion. And when your name's on the building, literally or figuratively, it feels a lot different to bring somebody into your group. You really want to make sure that they get it, that they're representing you, that they're treating the customers and the clients the way you want them to, that they're building the product the way you would want them to, serving people the way you would want them to. It's really hard. So it's really easy as a founder to just say, I'm just going to do that. Or to let noise get in your head because you're talking to other people who have done certain things that worked for them. I guess my best advice to anybody who's starting a business or who's in leadership of any business, but specifically a small business, when you don't know, just say you don't know. I mean,
It's
I don't know
okay.
if you've ever, yes, it's so
It's
okay.
okay.
And
It's yeah,
especially in a leadership role, if you can say, I don't know, or I messed that up, or man, that didn't go the way I wanted it to, you're also building a safer environment for other people to say, I don't know.
there you go.
So, yeah.
So that leads to my question, right? You've said that referrals and conversations, not cold outreach, are what actually grow your business. Why do you think services like yours have to be understood before they can actually be purchased or be hired?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's truly because there are so many people that still don't understand what HR does, what they could do, and then what they should do. And there's even HR people that don't know that because they've never worked in an environment where they were allowed to do that or expected to do that. So, and a lot of times too, if you go to school for HR, they teach you laws and guidelines. They are not necessarily teaching you strategy unless you take that coursework or get a master's or, go into organizational development or organizational psychology. And I want people to be able to say, I worked with Thrive HR and they reduced my turnover. They made people want to work at my organization. They made my business better. They made my revenue go up by aligning my business and my people strategy. And that sounds so not cliche, but so, sales taggy. But literally, if you just get the people are going to do the work. I know AI is a thing and it's going to be a thing and it's going to be a thing forever. But AI is, in my opinion, should not ever completely replace people. So if you're going to have any humans in your organization at all, they need to understand why they work at that business. What do they do? What are they supposed to do? How are they supposed to do it? Why are they supposed to do it? And is this somewhere they want to come every single day? So if somebody can say that that's what we did for them was help those employees understand what they're doing and why they're doing it and why they should work hard to make the business more successful because it does come around to them, then that's a compliment. And the best compliment I ever got from a client was when they said, you just make the hard stuff really easy. And that's what I want people to say when they're talking about our organization and why they should work with Thrive HR specifically. If I made a cold call and say, do you need help with your HR? They'd say no thank you and hang up. I already have someone. We're not big enough. I sent out about 1,000 cold emails at the last quarter of the year. I got one response and it said, "We don't need you at this time."
because they don't understand.
They don't
It's
know what we
it's
do.
yeah, they don't, and they don't see the pain point exist until it's actually becomes a problem,
Well, and it's like, I don't need anybody to do my payroll. I have somebody who does
which
my
is a simpler right.
benefits.
That happen year 1, it happens year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and then they're like, "Well, what are we doing wrong? We need to hire better salespeople. We need to hire better onboarding team." No, 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 no. It's the culture that you've created 4 or 5 years ago, what led to the issue today.
And I'm like, hold your managers accountable. Hold your managers accountable.
That's it.
Hold your people accountable. And it was just like talking to a brick wall. It was so frustrating.
Fantastic. I hope owners that watching this podcast or leaders in the corporate world get a lot of value out of this. And how can they reach out to you?
Thank you. They can go to thrivehrkc.com. It's my website, or you can email me at Kelly, Kelly at thrivehrkc.com, or I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.